In this example, we see that we do have a square, and then we just have constants here, so we do need to use the square root property. But before we can do that, we have to isolate the square first. And that is accomplished quite easily, just by subtracting 7 from both sides. So, subtract 7 on both sides. That's going to isolate this square, so we're going to have x plus 4 quantity squared equals negative 12. Now that we have the square isolated, we need to apply the square root property. So, for the square root property, we're going to take the square root of the left side and the square root of the right side, making sure that we remember the plus or minus. We expect to get two answers here, and that plus or minus is going to make sure that we do get those two solutions. Now the next step is just a matter of simplifying. On the left side, we use the square root to cancel the squares, so now we have just x plus 4. On the other side, we have plus or minus, and now we've got to take this radical, this square root of negative 12, and figure out how we're going to reduce this guy. Well, we can break down the negative 12 to be negative 4 times 3. Now the reason I put this negative with the 4 is to remind us that we're going to have to pull an I out of this guy. So the square root of the negative will give me the I. The square root of the 4 gives me 2. So I'll have a 2I on the outside, and then I've got my 3 left inside the radical. When you are simplifying these radicals and you're pulling things out of it, that goes directly in front of your radical. The plus or minus sign is still out in front of this guy. So plus or minus 2I times the square root of 3. And then of course the last step is to get this x by itself, and that's to move the 4 over. Remember, when you're moving things from the left side to the right side, it needs to go in front of the plus or minus to avoid us making costly mistakes later on. So this guy is x equals negative 4 plus or minus 2I times the square root of 3. Since we have i's and radicals, there's not really anything else that we can do here except to make sure that it is totally simplified. There's nothing else that we can do with the square root of 3, so we're going to be done here. And you see this kind of nasty answer that we have, so there's no way that we would have gotten this answer from factoring. So this is all that we need to say here. Now you could separate this and say, and very distinctly say what your two solutions are. So you could say that x equals negative 4 plus 2I times the square root of 3, or x equals negative 4 minus 2I times the square root of 3. This right here, all written out, is the same thing as having it condensed with the plus or minus, so these guys are both acceptable.